Hello everyone. I see a few people have joined already. That's great to hear. Hi everyone. We're going to start the event in about 3 or 4 minutes just to let more people join. But in the meantime, I'm very curious to know where people are joining us from. It's always nice to see that these online events reach a very wide audience geographically. So if you want to tell me in the chat where you're joining us from, that'd be wonderful. I'll share myself. I'm sitting right now in downtown Vancouver in a neighborhood called the West End. It's very rainy again. Vancouver, downtown east side, New Westminster. Thanks Jessica, Corey, and Katya for sharing. And Kelly from Richmond. Wonderful. And Rocky from Vancouver. And Asri from Burnaby, New West, Vancouver. Great. Awesome. So I'm curious, has anyone read Surrey, New West? Very nice spread all over the Lower Mainland. Has anyone read Ethan's work before? Have you followed his columns online in various publications? Have you read his book about the pandemic? Has anyone read this book? Not yet. Okay. So the good news is that we do have both of his books at the library at VPL for those of you who have library cards in this library. Complete newbie. Well, that's what the event is for, Sai, for newbies as well, to learn all about Ethan and his work and about this topic. So we're going to wait one more minute, and in a minute we're going to get this started. In the meantime, sit back and relax. You have read the book, of course. Hey everyone, that's Vass commenting. Vass happens to be the person who is going to be on stage interviewing Ethan. So I hope you've read the book. Okay, let's get this event started. Very excited to be here. So my name is Jorge Amigo. I'm the head of cultural programming for the Vancouver Public Library. I'm going to be your host today. My colleague Candy is working on the event as well, and they'll be in the background making sure everything runs smoothly and managing the chat. So please say hi to Candy in the chat. A very quick note about the chat actually. It'd be nice for everyone to see your comments so that we can all interact with what you're sharing. So please take a second to change your settings in the chat. So there's a blue button that usually says panelists and attendees and everyone, or it's depending on what version of Zoom you have, it might say host and panelists or everyone. Switch it to everyone, please, so that everyone can see what you're sharing, and that creates this sense of we're all in the same room together and everyone can see a vibrant, exciting chat environment. So thanks for switching that. Now, before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are hosting this event from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And I want to encourage all of you to read and understand the history of this land and the people who have taken care of it for thousands of years, and what it means for you to be here. Now, if you're joining us from another part of the country or another part of the world, there is a great resource that Candy is going to share in the chat so you can learn about the land where you live. I find this interactive map very illuminating, so highly recommend that you click on that. Now, tonight, we're here to talk about cryptocurrencies. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen headlines about the wild price swings for Bitcoin over the last couple of years, and you might have also read that many people became millionaires overnight or lost their life savings by investing in digital currencies that you've probably never heard of. So today we've invited a couple of speakers who will help us understand what's driving this frenzy over cryptocurrencies. And they're going to give us a glimpse into the main characters, the culture, and the scandals of the crypto world. So I'm going to introduce them now. Vass, Ethan, can you please join me on stage? Hello. Nice to see you both. So Ethan Lowe is a journalist and author who lives in Toronto, and in the last 2 years he has published 2 extremely topical books. Now, first, at the beginning of last year, Ethan was in China when the COVID-19 pandemic began. So he traveled across Asia and Europe to the pandemic hot zones, and he wrote a riveting book called Field Notes from a Pandemic, which we have at the library. And it's also phenomenal if you want to buy it. And this year, as the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies skyrocketed in popularity, he published a new book, Once a Bitcoin Miner, which is why we're all here today. It's a phenomenal book. I recommend all of you buy it or get it. Give it as a gift for Christmas for all your friends and people who want to know more about this cryptocurrency world. If you're into getting into loaning books, borrowing books, you can get it at the library as well. So we have a few copies at VPL. So now Vass Bednar is the executive director of the Master of Public Policy in Digital Society at McMaster University. She's an interdisciplinary policy expert who has held leadership roles at Delphia, at Airbnb, at Queen's Park, at the City of Toronto, and the University of Toronto. Vass is also a fellow at the Public Policy Forum. So, Vass, Ethan, wonderful to have you here. The floor is all yours.
Thanks. Ethan, take all my money. Just kidding. I'm going to do a bit of an intro to the book. I saw some people in the chat said they hadn't read the book yet and apologize. Please don't apologize. You're here to learn about the book and the issues and get excited about it. So this isn't a book report or a quiz on the book by any means, though we can quiz Ethan if we want. I think he's given us permission. Ethan, I hope I don't embarrass you, but I want to read a little bit for a bit of intro before I ask you a first question. Yeah? Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, you're like, get it over with, Vass. The Times has called this book a rare example of a readable snapshot of a world we all need to get more informed about. And it's a really fun read. You made these issues and this history accessible to someone who's been on the sidelines or is a little bit unfamiliar with the sector, especially with that Canadian perspective. It's also been described as a map to the new frontier and a rollicking ride across it. So in this book, Ethan takes us on an epic quest through the proverbial cryptocurrency Wild West. We're going to talk about Wild West too, quite a bit in this discussion, through riches, absurdity, wonder, and woe, from investing in Bitcoin in university to his time writing and then mining the digital asset. You meet all kinds of really cool characters. You hang out in North Korea, no big deal. With somebody who's later arrested for allegedly teaching blockchain to the totalitarian state. We'll touch on that. And then you came of age in the 2008 financial crisis, as did I. I also remember Googling what is prorogation, how to spell it, and thinking, hey, maybe it's a good time to be in school. Your generation, our generation, this generation has a natural affinity with this rebel internet money, the so-called millennial gold, which I actually hadn't heard it called it before, but perhaps that ages me. Created in the wake of that economic storm, at once an immersive narrative of adventure and fortune, once a Bitcoin miner, is also a work of journalistic rigor. So thank you for all the work that you put into examining this domain through the lens of the human condition. The book is also really funny in parts. Like, is this just your personality? There are two parts that I have highlighted. I had no debt. I had yet to read the latest Harry Potter story. So much to live for. And like everyone else with a lot of money and no real job, like Dennis Rodman, like you have this sense of humor that shines through too. Is that something you've always had? Is that kind of deadpan nature part of writing in an internet forward society, or is it something that's come for you in hindsight, kind of reflecting on your career and your history so far?
Well, I think it's definitely something that I've always had. And while writing books, I was at Reuters, and if you ever read Reuters stories, they're always quite dry, and there actually is an upper limit to the number of words you can write. If you go more than 400 words, you have to seek permission. So
really,
for a long time, I think I had to really suppress that side of myself. So writing books, and I find it very freeing. And I'm glad you saw the humor.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I also, just wanted to commend you because I think making complex things colloquial requires humor. And you are an expert kind of brokering your front row seat in this Wild West, just to mix up all the metaphors. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to just kick off with a brief explanation of what a Bitcoin miner is and what one does for the benefit of our audience members in case they're not sure, haven't Googled it yet. Would that be okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So Bitcoin, it's a form of currency that works without a central administrator. So entirely peer-to-peer. There are only users. So if I send one Bitcoin to you, how does that get to you? That happens because of the miners. So they facilitate these transactions, and while they do so, they earn additional units of the currency. So it's like mining for gold, and that's why they call it mining.
Perfect. Thank you. You've obviously, nailed that in a succinct and beautiful way. One thing you wrote in the Globe and Mail is that you've never considered the comparison to Bitcoin as a Wild West. It's like, how many times is she going to say Wild West tonight? We'll find out. As an insult. Can you tell us a little bit about the allure of Bitcoin's frontier mythology, or maybe why you've leaned into it instead of, running away in towards the hills?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think Wild West, while the real Wild West, it wasn't a good place to be. It's full of colonialism, brutality, and injustice. But the idea of the Wild West, why people back then they sought it, and why Western films, and it's a genre on which Hollywood built its bones, and every film is at heart a Western. The attractiveness of that, I think that comes from what the Wild West represents to the people back then, because there was lots of land, and at least it appeared so, and it appeared welcoming. Anyone could go there, and lots of riches. And I think most important of all, it's free from the societal hierarchies back home. Anyone who goes there, you start anew from the same, as much as you can get to such absolutes. You start from the same level playing ground. And in a way, I think why people seek the world of cryptocurrency now, it represents that to them.
I appreciate that very much. I want to touch on the role of regulators in this Wild West. Again, how fast was public policy woman going to go there? Once a Bitcoin miner, largely set in Calgary, involving the local cryptocurrency scene amid the 2017 cryptocurrency boom. A man with a complicated past rises to riches, but everything ends in shame and scandal, accusations of betrayal, broken dreams. This particular case that those sentences allude to is now before the Alberta Securities Commission. A decision is expected in the fall, unless I missed the decision. Can you elaborate on the relationship between the industry or the movement and regulators in Canada? It strikes me that here in Ontario, where you and I are at least, though we're visiting virtually the amazing Vancouver Public Library, and thanks guys for having us. Thank you for having us. It strikes me that many cryptocurrency platforms have been, slow to register here in Ontario with the Ontario Securities Commission. The OSC has warned of a crackdown. And, you write these snippets, meeting someone at a conference who's a regulator, and then there's kind of they're not a protagonist in the book, but kind of an infamous character that's maybe we could talk about too. I'm asking you 10 questions in one, but, are these the sheriffs? What's the relationship between, the state and government? Should there be one at all, or what's the current status?
So firstly, on that case in Calgary, the decision hadn't come yet. I think it was expected in the fall, but it might take a while. And that was a case of essentially the blind leading the blind, and everyone just lost a lot of money in the end. And 2017, that was a crazy time. That was when they say if you put all the different projects on a dartboard, you throw a dart and you put your money in anything in the bull market, everyone's a genius. Everyone makes lots of money, but when the winter comes, it comes for everyone. And definitely is a lack of rules in this place. And as you mentioned, what's happening in Ontario, I think largely what Canadian regulators do is that they ape what's happening in the US. And with Gary Gensler at the SEC, I think US is increasingly hawkish. And I think with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I think that's going to stoke some sentiment in the crypto world.
Okay, we'll keep our eyes on that. The book posits, we've touched on this, that cryptocurrency reflects the very character of Calgary, its can-do, boomtown attitude reminiscent of the Old West, and how its fortunes swing based on a volatile commodity. In terms of the setting, significant parts of your book delve into Calgary's history and its frontier heritage. I wondered, given that Calgary has a new mayor-elect, I think officially mayor now, what do you think they need to know and understand about the Bitcoin community, its history, culture, and subcultures and heritage there, so that the mayor can be an effective leader of this still hopefully a little bit Wild West?
So those parts in the book, they were one of the most funnest parts to write. And I did a lot of research into the history of Calgary, tried to blend its Wild West aspect with the Wild West aspect of crypto. And there's a new mayor, but I don't necessarily think that the new mayor is that different from the old one. The old one's, pretty progressive as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a continuation of that. And I think ultimately, I think Calgary, it's I guess people view it as like a different place from the West. It's more business friendly and people are more individualistic. And I think while its crypto community isn't as big as, say, Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, it's definitely there's an overrepresentation in it if you account for the population. And I think the regulators will be wise to talk with the industry and to help foster it.
I think that sounds like great advice. I'd love to receive it if I were the mayor. One aspect that struck me in reading the book when I wasn't smiling at your non sequiturs was that the sources of your learning or information on cryptocurrencies seem to also be kind of similarly decentralized. You talk about meetups. You kind of have a low-key brag. You're having like side meetups with your meetups. People who was texting you kind of mean, being like, my meetups are huge, or I've had like 500 meetups. That's a separate issue that I alluded to because that just made no sense in the question. Text messages. Tell us a little bit about that, about, the how you gain comfort and confidence kind of navigating those communities. Did you feel welcome? Were you immediately welcome? Were they hostile? And then I'd love to know how your sources of information have maybe evolved or changed over time, right? Are they still peer-led? Is Bitcoin chatter keeping Clubhouse alive? Should we add you on Clubhouse? Tell us just, a little bit about learning and community building, because seems like there were so many really strong personalities in your story, and it's not a story, in your book as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. I think meetups, I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, they're really built on these meetups. I think the advent of the internet, and I know without the internet, Bitcoin cannot function, but imagine if it can function without the internet, but it still would not have taken off because the internet is what brought these people together. And imagine if say 5 to 10% of the population are interested in this in a small town. Those 5 to 10% of the people, they'll never find each other. Yeah. But with the meetups, this has happened. But those meetups, a lot of them are also very crazy. And I wrote about one in the book, the very first one I went to in Calgary. It was just selling this absolute scam. And there was a guy literally quoting Bible verses, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. So I guess decentralized in information sources, you have to really vet them. Some of them, they're just not the right ones.
Do you think your expertise and background as a journalist helped you to navigate those scenes, or helped you discern that very first meetup was a scam? I mean, I noticed there was, again, I'm going to be boring for a second, there was a Bank of Canada study that found that people with low financial literacy are more likely to invest in cryptocurrencies. That is no shade on you at all. But it makes me wonder, I don't know, how should educators support people that want to learn about Bitcoin, but also, what's some of the duty of those peer-led or peer-to-peer communities in helping others navigate a meetup like the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think there's actually this very popular Bitcoin meme, at least this meme in the crypto world, that there's like this bell curve, and they say people who make a lot of money in crypto, they're either like very smart on one end or just really, really dumb on the other end, who just follow whatever everyone does. Yeah. And I think I definitely had a good bullshit detector as a journalist, because as a journalist, I think since day one, they drill into you that always assume that people are out to get you and feed you false information. Because like, for example, that meetup with selling the scam, I am not the only person to arrive at the conclusion that it's a scam, but somehow, like, instinctually, it just felt really shady to me. But there were people who paid a lot of attention, did a lot of studies, who did their own research, and after a long time, and they were like, yeah, this is a scam.
Okay.
Yeah.
But alongside scams, there's also a particular playfulness in the ecosystem, it seems, right? Kind of joke coins, Kanye West, you contrast that with the kind of recent scam with a Squid Games coin. Um, do you have a second to elaborate maybe on the commentary that coins like this can offer us culturally from a policy perspective, or in terms of clues around generational attitudes towards, I don't know, the economy, intergenerational mobility, life right now, internet life?
Well, I don't have that many, I guess, very deep thoughts on that.
Okay,
But
that's totally cool. And I mean, I don't know how to make sense of those kind of joke coins myself, but I find them charming and intriguing. We can leave it at that. Would you like to talk about some of the, I want to say characters in the book, but they're not characters, they're real people. So I'm so sorry that I'm using that language. I do note that a lot of them seemed to be male, except for the fearsome regulator and someone's girlfriend. Just kidding. I mean, I shouldn't say just kidding. But one, is the cryptocurrency community as diverse and inclusive as the libertarian values that it promotes? And then let's get into some of the amazing people you met along the way, and I'll ask you some specific questions about them.
So I'm very glad you brought that up, because as I was writing, I was taking note that everyone in this world, so many of them are male, and I actually pretty went out of my way to dig out all this information on the regulator, just so that I can have a strong female character who was someone's girlfriend.
Yeah.
But I think crypto is definitely overly male. Like there's a party in Seoul where they had to hire female models because there just weren't any women there. And I think crypto, in many ways, it's a exaggerated version of the outside world, just like how Bitcoin swings more than traditional finance. So why are there so few women in Bitcoin? It's probably the same reason that there are so few women in the public sphere in general.
Okay. I feel like that's a little bit of an unfair question to ask you, because I just sort of shared my own observation, but thank you for sharing your reflections and observations there. Without giving away too much of what's in the book, can we talk about your surreal visit to North Korea? And, first of all, what was it like for you? What did it feel like to have that opportunity? I want to give you the chance to elaborate on kind of how you write about it and how you reflect on it, because it stood out that you were cautious and mindful, but also a very good observer of the dynamics that you were navigating.
So 2018, North Korea announced it was going to hold a crypto conference. Yeah. And I have always wanted to go to North Korea. There's a personal reason in that my parents have always talked about how North Korea resembles the China in which they grew up, but wow, China has changed so much. And I thought, but North Korea has remained rather stagnant. It's like North Korea 50 years ago. I thought, if I go there, I can see the land of my parents, like a time capsule kind of way. So wow, that's one reason. And two is the crypto reason, because North Korea is accused of doing lots of shady things with respect to crypto. And they said they were holding a conference. I thought I can go there and see for myself what's going on the ground. And people go to North Korea all the time. They can't do that right now because of the pandemic, but it was always open to tourists. So that spring of 2019, I went there, and it did not turn out to be the trip I expected. And then after the trip, the post-trip experience was also not what I expected, because very out of the blue, to me at least, someone who was there, Virgil Griffith, he is quite high up at the Ethereum Foundation at the time, and he was arrested by the FBI for that trip.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is it like to even just know someone that has been arrested by the FBI? And just as an aside too, I swear this is related. Another aspect I found charming of the book is your relentlessness getting in touch with people or asking follow-up questions for interviews. And that's where I saw the journalist shining through too. You share some excerpts of text messages in the book, and I think that was fantastic and really interesting to read too. So thank you for that transparency. Yeah, what was it like to know someone and know that you were on a trip that's under investigation in some way?
It was definitely very surreal, and it was an absolute shock because he was accused of teaching crypto and blockchain to the North Koreans to help them build up their technology and break sanctions. And unique among all of us, he was an American. He had the ill fate of being born an American, and thus Americans are actually, I think they are the only people who are banned from going to North Korea by their government. So he was already in a lot of trouble simply by going. And I saw him in court in
Wow.
September, and he pleaded guilty, which was quite a surprise because for 2 years he's been fighting the charge, and he sighed audibly. He said he had depression, and while I did not know him prior to the trip, he made a deep impression, and I thought he was a cool guy. And yeah, it I felt some vicarious shell shock seeing him like that.
Yeah, of course. I feel some vicarious shell shock hearing you relay that, and I just wanted to try out that phrase as well. Well, I wish him luck as he continues to navigate this. Another larger than life Canadian character that you come across, don't get too close to, but come across, is Gerald Cotton of Quadriga. So of course, this is a story that has captured, I think, the attention of many Canadians. I think it was, a major story for many, maybe an introduction to this whole sector sphere, right? If people weren't going to meetups, now they were gaining familiarity with some of the language of the Bitcoin world. Do you mind relaying a little bit of that for our audience? And I'm making the assumption that people have maybe listened to the CBC podcast or heard about this person, or the kind of myth or fake rumor that this person might have faked their own death, but has maybe I'll use the word scam, that there was some a lack of due diligence in their business, perhaps. I'm speaking too much. What's that been like for you in terms of hindsight, but also you were navigating that as a member of the community as news was coming out, etc. It'd be cool to hear more from you on that, and for me to stop talking.
Yeah, that was very wild. And because I met the guy 2014, I met the guy.
Yeah.
And he
did your bullshit detector go off then? Sorry, I interrupted you. Did it go off?
No.
Okay.
I guess my bullshit detector isn't that good
because
I thought he was a cool guy, So later I was interviewed about this when he was reported dead by the CBC, and I thought, I said I thought he was a cool guy, and I bought crypto through Quadriga because I met him and I thought he was reliable. And
wow,
at the time everyone had an account on Quadriga, and so afterward when he died, and I actually had some crypto on there. I had 13 ethers, and was not worth much at the time, but I think right now 13 ethers, that's like tens of thousands of dollars. One ether is like what, 5,000 Canadian, so that's it's like 60,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's accused of faking his death, and one interesting thing that always stood out was that he left a very detailed will.
Right.
He allocated a specific amount of money to care for his 2 dogs. And if you go through that much trouble to make your will, how do you not leave the passwords to your crypto? So how's that believable? But I don't draw any conclusion either way.
Yeah, I've enjoyed learning about that myself. I watched the documentary that came out on Hot Docs. Do you remember what it's called? It had a good pun in the title. I should not have mentioned it now, because I'm saying
Switch, right?
Dead Man's Switch. Yeah.
I met the director when she was filming it.
Oh, cool. I was like, you're probably in it, and now I'm going to embarrass myself.
I wasn't in it.
Okay, thanks. Something I appreciated about that was learning about how people in the community were kind of galvanized to share information, to try to, you know, uh, understand where money might have gone, to do kind of open source Excels. And back to that kind of peer-led open community, it was horrible circumstances for people to have to kind of put their heads together in that way, but also really fascinating to see, because you have to imagine regulators trying to maybe replicate some of that work, or potentially working together with the community. Anyway, I found that intriguing, and you're like, Vass, why don't you interview me and stop sharing your own pieces of feedback?
So I think either I or you were frozen just now, but I think I get the gist.
Oh no.
I saw definitely that people in the community, they were chasing down a lot of the leads, because I was paying attention to all the revelations that came out afterwards. So quite a while after he died, maybe a year or two, it was revealed that he had gambled with users' money on really risky trades, including Dogecoin. He had lost a lot of users' money. And as a teenager, he had scammed people on forums by selling get-rich-quick schemes. And so all of this came out, it was reported in the media, but it started out in those Telegram chat rooms formed by former Quadriga users.
Thank you. And sorry if it was me that was frozen. I promise you missed almost nothing. Let's switch gears for a second and touch on your other book, spoiler alert. So your other book is Field Notes from a Pandemic. You have a Walrus article, Why We're So Bad at Disaster Planning. I wondered if you think there could be any parallels between our kind of terrible disaster planning and the way that policymakers are tiptoeing around Bitcoin, or we're slow to act and kind of intervene, maybe not intervene to be interventionist, but maybe make sure there's some consumer protection kind of supports for people. It seems like in the wake of Quadriga, some people expected that there was recourse, and it's been, again, it seems frustrating for people that there's not. Do you think there are any blind spots that we could watch for that have caught us off guard in the past or could in the future? Or is this question just way too much of a stretch and I can go to one of my other ones?
It's not a stretch, but I think the very definition of a blind spot is that we can't see it. So if we can actually predict this and patch it, then it won't be a blind spot anymore. And this whole Quadriga thing is a perfect illustration that the reason it happened is because we didn't see it. We didn't have all these safeguards. We didn't have all this hawkish regulation from the OSC now. And that's one of the reasons it happened. And now that we have, the OSC has put all this effort into putting all this regulation there, and perhaps we will not see a Quadriga in the future. But because they have put all their effort here, what are they not looking at? So we don't know.
Did you notice if the vibe or maybe questions that people brought to meetups kind of following Quadriga, if you were still going to them, did it rock or shake the community in some way? Were people more skeptical? Are there benefits maybe coming out of that case that you were able to observe, just as somebody who's been, for lack of a better word, kind of entrenched or immersed in the scene?
So there's a crypto saying that it's called "not your keys, not your coins." So I think crypto circles, they encourage you not to keep your coins on an exchange like Quadriga, and there has been this encouragement long before Quadriga collapsed that the beauty of Bitcoin is that you get to be your own bank. So if you hold Bitcoin in your own wallet without your password, nobody can take it away from you. It cannot be hacked, cannot be lost. But when you don't keep it yourself, when you keep it on an exchange controlled by a third party, that's when all hell can break loose. And I think the fallout of Quadriga, it has made people more embrace that Bitcoin mantra of not your keys, not your coins.
Okay. I want to follow up on kind of mantras or the kind of ethos of the community. You're a leading voice in Canada, and I'm sure elsewhere. elsewhere, and you're all the more prominent for your writing and for your book, and thank you for it. Do you feel that you're someone that has to respond to or grapple with criticisms of the scene and the space? So for instance, Jackson Palmer had this like viral Twitter thread. Obviously, I get all my questions on Twitter. Just kidding, it's my only social media. Explaining why he will not return to cryptocurrency. He said he believes it's an inherently right-wing, hyper-capitalistic technology built primarily to amplify the wealth of its proponents through a combination of tax avoidance, diminished regulatory oversight, and artificially enforced scarcity. I can drop that link in the chat for people who are in the chat, but it strikes me as like a noisy, controversial space. How do you either cut out the noise or observe that, you know, people are able to concurrently engage in these conversations about kind of what it all means and what it's about, while carrying on their daily lives and managing their own investments?
So I think the crypto space, it's big enough that, sorry, I'm having technical issues. Can you tell me if you hear me? Am I still there?
You're still here. I hear you. Your room went purple for a bit, but I thought it was really cool.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Sorry about that. I feel
okay.
The space is, I think, big enough that it cannot be painted with one broad brush. And I think for every really hardcore, there are people called Bitcoin maximalists who feel that Bitcoin is the only true cryptocurrency and that anything else is a scam. And they would make fun of projects like Ethereum. But then within Ethereum, there are like rival projects who try to be the next Ethereum. And the Ethereum people, they are now branded as Ethereum maximalists who hate the other projects. And that I think there is a very diverse range of ideologies there. I think if Bitcoin maximalists are the right wings, Ethereum folks are the left. And it's probably not even one spectrum. It's probably like a 3D thing.
Yeah.
And it's becoming bigger and bigger.
Well, speaking of 3D, I was going to ask you to try to explain. I briefly saw a meme, which is like a 2x2 grid. And it's like people that understand crypto, people that don't understand crypto, people that invest in crypto, people who don't. And I wanted you to help me make sense of why people were why that was so funny. But I feel like it might be a difficult conversation to have without me putting up visuals. Do you know the meme that I'm talking about?
Yes, I think the version I saw, it used characters from The Wire. Is that what?
Yes, but then all kinds of TV people. But you know what did people want to put forward? Because again, it was an irreverent way to communicate. It's very much the digital led conversation. It's a particular space. So going back to that kind of, you know, wildness, playfulness, jokey vibes that can be part of the scene. What were people trying to say through that meme about the mismatch between knowledge and investments in the space?
Glad you asked that. And this goes back to that meme I referenced earlier about the bell curve meme, and that people make lots of money in crypto. They are either like on one side really smart or on the other side really stupid. And this ties into the meme. This doesn't have that much to do with crypto, but it's really like internet thing. The other meme of the midwit, which is how people who, I guess, who have normal IQs, they are the least satisfied in the world. Whereas people who are just really dumb follow their instincts, and people are really smart and they know that there is value in following your instincts and sometimes not thinking. I'm not saying I endorse this view, but this is what the meme describes. And so that four square meme of people understand crypto, people don't, I think it describes people understand that they're like smart, and people don't understand crypto and invest and they're stupid. And the other two squares are there are people in that middle, if that makes sense. It's my first time trying to explain this.
Yeah, it does make sense. And thank you for entertaining that question. I don't know where I am on that grid, but I'll tell you, I have 3 questions I'm going to ask you all at once because they're all kind of with the public policy bent related to the book. You can pick all of them or just pick one, and then I want to make sure I get to questions from our audience. Is that okay with you? I mean,
Absolutely.
one that I was trying to make sense of New York City's mayor-elect, saying he wants to be paid in Bitcoin. And I also wanted to point out that I thought it was very charming that when you buy the book directly from ECW Press, you can purchase it with cryptocurrency. I'm not sure if you have a sense of whether anyone's done this, but kudos to you for helping make that happen. So believe it or not, that was actually one question. 2, in the US, we see crypto.com recently paying $700 million for naming rights for a sports stadium, right? I think this speaks to how the community is becoming a part of our everyday lives, or maybe more part of the mainstream than it's ever been before. This would see them taking over the naming rights for the Staples Center. I'm curious how you see cryptocurrency wallets and platforms and coins being a more prominent or formal part of our everyday lives or of our kind of modern economy. And then my third one, and maybe this is a wild card, but I promise you it's super Canadian. Maybe we should touch on Bitcoin mining in Canada's economy. So there was recently a Bitcoin, it's called the Power to Data project. It was unveiled at an idle North Bay power plant. I don't expect that you necessarily heard about it, but I wondered if you thought, a couple of the students from the MPP program are here at our event and in the chat. Should policymakers be thinking about Bitcoin mining as part of their economic development strategies? How does the price of power fit into that? Is there, more of an untapped role for Canada in that regard? So take your pick from those, and apologies for their wonkiness and nerdiness, but I hope you see some fun or excitement in one or two of those.
I will try to get to all of them in the order that I heard them.
Okay.
The mayor receiving his salary in Bitcoin, publicity stunt, and the other question of whether the book can be bought with Bitcoin. I went through a lot of trouble to make that happen, and so the publisher isn't actually selling it; it's linking to another place that's selling it, and that place has sold out. So, and it only recently restocked. So, because you weren't the only person to ask me this question, lots of people have asked me this question.
Oh man! Well, I'm the first one that asked you about North Bay and Bitcoin mining. That's for sure. Or the second, you tell me. We'll each take a sip.
So yeah, with respect to Canada and Bitcoin mining, I see that this isn't, I think, that discussed, but is also not completely hidden from the public. There are stories done on this that when you drill for oil, gas is often a byproduct. And we talk often about oil pipelines, but gas pipelines, like at least in the view of the energy industry, they don't have much of that as well. A lot of the times, gas that is a byproduct of oil, they just burn it. It's called flaring because they can't just release it. Or because a lot of times gas in Canada sells for negative. So essentially you pay people to take it away for you because sometimes it gets that bad. But this gas, it can be used to mine Bitcoin. And I think in the view of the industry, that's a very good way to make use of what they call stranded energy, stranded gas. But yeah, you have to convince oil and gas people to do that. And some of them are warming to the idea, but yeah, some of them will just ask you, what's Bitcoin?
Yeah, but I think that's a fascinating overlap. When you put my Venn diagram over with yours and kind of find our common ground, I think talking about whatever it was with the gas that you just explained would be a very intriguing area of collaboration. Let me pause for a second, and I know this might feel uncomfortable because it's digital and people can't put up their hands or they might be unseen, but please feel free to let me know your question in the chat or message me directly. Maybe you've been to one of Ethan's meetups, maybe you're one of his fan club. I've heard there are people that are coming to every single one of his book events. And by the way, this is his last one of 2021. So now is the time to get your questions in. You know, for first time caller, we're here. We'll take a second just for those potential questions. And if you guys don't have any, I have one more, but I'm also happy to thank you. And we can have some digital applause over here. There is a comment in the chat related to fraud. So, you know, thank you, Robin, reminding us that in terms of accountabilities, it's not a totally lawless space, keeping in mind that fraud is best dealt with by the criminal justice system, which is relatively weak in Canada. So thank you for sharing that observation.
Well, I think, well, this is not necessarily a crypto issue, but
yeah,
strength of the justice system is never perfect. People might find it weak here, but if you go to a place like China, it's just overwhelmingly strong. And people have complained of police brutality in the US, but in Asia, they have complained of police passivity, where police just, they're afraid to intervene in violence sometimes, and that has happened. So I guess it's hard to strike a balance.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. Melody, we have a question. Have you received threats from anyone you covered in the book? And I'll include really mean text messages in that question, because I feel like we didn't get to touch on your text enough, if that's okay to say.
Yeah, so there are lots of people I write about that don't want to be written about. But as a journalist, you don't care about people's consent, but it's a legal and ethical obligation to present to people what you're going to write about them, because nobody should be surprised to see that they are going to be written about. They might not like it, but they shouldn't be seeing it from the book. And so there is one character, Jan Serato, and he's accused of being the founder of the investment club that ended up before the Alberta Securities Commission. And his side of the story is that he was not the ringleader. And I had to approach him many times, deeply uncomfortable, and in person. And those text messages, he wasn't very nice to me. But I feel, and it's this uncomfortableness, I feel is a necessary uncomfortableness. It's a reminder of the heavy responsibility a journalist has, that you hold sway over people's lives and reputations. And if it's comfortable, you won't remember it.
Very well said. And I appreciate that blending of both your worlds, speaking of Venn diagrams. As you wrap this whirlwind virtual book tour, was there any questions that you were hoping someone would ask you that they didn't, or a part of the book that you feel has been underexplored by your interviewers, despite their best intentions? I'll give you a second to reflect on it, but I'd love to hear if there's anything still on your mind that you haven't had the chance to vocalize or explore.
Not that much, because I did quite a lot of interviews. Everyone's been quite thorough, but I think, well, one thing that I guess in my view perhaps not talked about much is the story craft behind it. It's a work of narrative nonfiction. Try to make it read like a novel, and because I feel that's an easy way in when you talk about the human condition, and not delve too deep into the policy talk or the technical discourse. And went through a lot of trouble, like researching which way the wind was blowing on this particular day, so I can describe the weather, because all of that is true.
The weather is accurate in the book. Yes, I love that. And how does one research the weather?
There's historical weather. You just look it up on the internet, and the wind direction, and sometimes you look up archival footage. And in the beginning, I write about like a series of killings, and the snow on the ground. I had to make sure when I described the snow was actually that way on that day.
I like that. you did that, and it was vivid that you also reminded people of the weather. We do have a question from Gloria too. It's basic, but a basic question can be great. So Gloria, thank you so much for it. Where do you see Bitcoin's future in 10 or 20 years? Get that magic 8-ball out. Do you feel comfortable making predictions? I mean, we touched on maybe the mainstreaming, more familiarity, a generation kind of capturing or capitalizing on this new vehicle. How do you see it evolving? Do you think it'll become more formal? Will it stay wild? Will there be some joke coins, or is it going to grow up at some point?
Well, I think what we have seen in El Salvador, or when it made Bitcoin its legal tender, we will see more Latin American countries follow suit, and particularly because the financial infrastructure is very bad there, and they are hugely dependent on the dollar, and that's a bit of a yoke over them. I think some of them, Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, particularly, he wants to shake that off, and we will see more countries following suit. And I want to expand the definition of Bitcoin a little, if you want to talk about the wider crypto space. And depending on how we define a cryptocurrency, I would see central bank digital currencies taking a huge role in this space, particularly in China, which has really pushed very hard its China coin. And we will see a day when everyone in China uses that coin. And I think in the broader blockchain space, we will see, I think, Ethereum. We will see more of the online services we have being on blockchain-based networks.
Very cool. We've noted that. A couple more questions coming in. What's your next book about? Do you have one in mind? Or are you going to finally take a bit of a break? What's on the horizon?
From Melody. So Melody's a friend. I might have told her about this before, but it's not something I can talk about publicly yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is something that's coming.
Okay, cool. We'll set an alert for your name, and we'll look out for that. Katya has a bit of a meetup related question. Will you be at CoinFest Online next weekend, December 3rd to 4th, 2021, or are you taking a break from being online? What's the story there?
Probably no. It's the first time I'm hearing of it. But I would say I'm dying to go to a real life conference. I haven't been to one since before the pandemic started, and the last Bitcoin conference in Miami, I heard it was wild, but I didn't go.
Yeah, we didn't touch on the wildness of some of the parties and meetups that you went to, but I feel like maybe the more vivid or salacious aspects of the book are to be discovered upon reading. I have a quick follow-up to Gloria's question, actually, and I'm keeping it Canadian and wonky. A think tank called CG, so the Center for International Governance and Innovation, based out of Waterloo, recently published a paper. The paper is called Canada and the Digitization of Money, Key Takeaways from a Virtual Workshop of International and Canadian Experts. I didn't see your name on the list of people that were at that roundtable, but I think you should have been there. And if you were there, do you think you would have advice, or are you someone that's comfortable maybe advising, federal governments on the future of money and Canada and digitization, given your expertise, or is there a part of you that fundamentally just resists or rejects that formality?
Well, I thank you for the very high praise. When you say I should have been at that table, I think if I were to say something about that, I did notice that recently the Bank of Canada made a very important hire in building a central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
And so before it hired for people to plan or to coordinate, and this job description straight up said to make a digital currency. And Bank of Canada has been hemming and hawing for, I think, 2 years. But I think back then, 2016, I was at Reuters. I was one of the reporters who broke the story that it was doing this, the Project Jasper thing, which was it's exploration of blockchain-based stuff. And I think it's coming one day. It's inevitable. And I would be particularly concerned about the privacy aspects, because
as you can see in China's digital currency, there is none of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm concerned about what's going to happen in this case.
Well, Ethan, thank you for your concern. Thank you for your candid reflections on your career, on your coming of age, your observations about the community, your experiences in that community, both good, bad, and super surreal. And I personally, I hope you're going to be someone that can be a touch point for regulators, for the Bank of Canada moving forward, because again, your insights and your combination of being a journalist and being, I guess, how do I refer to you now? An investor, a writer? What's your identity moving forward? You are who you are. And you've really added to Canada's cultural history and understanding of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency communities. And I'm delighted that we could round out your beautiful book tour with you. So thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to the Vancouver Public Library. I believe we're calling someone else up on stage. Hey, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Ethan and Vass. That was wonderful. What a great conversation. Thank you for guiding us through all the complexities of this topic, but also this riveting book, Vass. So thanks again for sharing everything. And thanks for everyone who joined with questions for Ethan. There's so much in this topic that I hope you all pick up the book, read it, and reach out to Ethan on Twitter or follow him, because he's always posting about this. So stay tuned with the conversation, and then follow Vass as well in the public policy space. She's one of the leading voices in Canada to follow, so do follow both of them on Twitter. Now, if you want to watch this event again, or if you want to share it with your friends, this event was live streamed to the library's Facebook page, so you can find it there. We're going to share the link right now. So if you have a friend who really needs to watch this and was not able to attend, you can share the link there. Also, as a public institution, it's really important for us to do programs that work for you. So we would love your feedback about this event. We're going to share a link to a form on the chat. It should take you about a minute to fill it out. And I promise you that your reply doesn't go to a dark hole of the internet. We actually do read them, and we adapt our programming based on what you tell us. So it's really important that you fill that out. So please click on that link in the chat. And lastly, before we end, and I say goodbye to our lovely speakers here, I'm going to tell you very briefly about the very last author event that we're hosting this season. And it's happening next Wednesday, December 1st at the same time. And we're going to host Kamal Al-Solaili, who is the new director of the journalism school at UBC. And he's going to be in conversation about his new book, Return, which is about why immigrants return to their homelands. So very, very powerful book. So that's next Wednesday at this same time. And we're sharing a link as well. So that's it for tonight. Ethan, Vass, thank you so much for being here. Thanks everyone for coming. And we're going to keep the event open for a few minutes in case people want to click on some of the links or connect. But in the meantime, Vass, Ethan, and myself are going to get off the stage and wrap it up. So thanks everyone for coming. Thank you too.
Thanks.
Thank you. And
Bye.
I should add that Kamal was my professor during first year, and you all should attend the event. His book is much better than mine.
Yeah,
Right.
at Ryerson, right? Yeah, he was your prof. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well,
All right.
thanks for everything. See you all. Bye.